And then before we start, I just want to make sure, like, appearance wise, where you're sitting, like, you feel good where you're at. Okay, cool. Just
Yeah.
like, yes, before we start, I always like checking in on that. So, okay. Now I'm like, I need to reset myself. Okay, awesome. Well, I am here with one of my clients, Casey. We worked together for, I think it was just almost a year, if not a year, kind of kept.
It was well over a year, actually.
Yeah. So typically my program is 4 months, but what I love about the work that I do is oftentimes I am building these longer relationships with my clients and they are able to see, the value in investing in coaching and getting that support. So your transformation has been so profound. So I'm really excited to dive into just the whole journey with you of before you started, where you were at in the beginning, and of course, talking about all the wins since then. So let's go ahead and dive in. I know that when you had first reached out to work with me, actually, a good friend of yours was one of my very first clients and had kind of recommended, looking into my support. So, would just love to hear a little bit around what was going on at your life during that time. What were some of the struggles that were coming up for you, and what had prompted you to reach out to me?
Yeah, so at the time that I had started, I think it was probably one of the first times me and my ex had gone back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
He probably just left me again, probably for the second time. And I was in this space where I felt like my life was completely out of control and I couldn't get a grasp on anything. It just felt like in the friends department, I wasn't necessarily like going anywhere career wise, relationship wise. I just felt really stuck and that there was nothing that I could do about it. And I had done therapy in the past that really ended up being just a couch session where you just share what was going on. You, make you feel better in the moment and not really give any action steps. So I was really looking for something that was going to give me those action steps to actually make a positive change in my life. So my friend had recommended to come see Jennie.
Awesome. Yeah. And it sounds like, you were looking for, yeah, how to get out of that stuck feeling, that stagnation. And can you speak a little bit to kind of the dynamic with your ex at the time of like the back and forth? Because it sounds like, right, you were kind of in this cycle that kept showing up for you.
Yeah, it had been a cycle of a lot of breadcrumbing that he would come on very strong in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I would latch on to that. And then um, I could feel him pulling away. And I got to the point where I was very in tuned with when things would shift with him that I maybe had another week or so before I knew that he was probably going to leave again.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't pull myself away from still wanting him to come back,
Yeah.
and very easily letting him come back when he did. Let it be a few weeks after or a month after, I would let him back in with very little ease on his
Yeah.
part.
Yeah. And I just want to highlight that too, because I think so many women can relate to that. I know I can relate to that. It's like we get frustrated with someone, but then at the end of the day, we care about them. And there's, a part of us deep down that did want it to work out. So when they come back and maybe tell us a little bit of what we want to hear or show up differently, even just a little bit, it's like, oh, let's grab onto that because like maybe this is the time that they'll realize how great I am or like that this could actually work out. And so it is easy to end up in these cycles. And I know I've spent years in those cycles and I just want to like normalize that as well. Cause I think sometimes when we're in those patterns, it can feel isolating and, we can be really hard on ourselves for like, oh my gosh, I went back again.
The shame aspect of letting that person back in, knowing that it's probably going to turn out the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, definitely that showing that little bit of you showed up a tiniest little bit differently and I've allowed you back in
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it just didn't work out again. And
Yeah.
separate that one little change that they made from a full blown change in their capability of being there for you in a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is very common. And I think that as common as it is, women still feel alone in it. You know what I mean? But I think it's so important to bring that compassion to ourselves of like, okay, at the end of the day, and I've probably said this to you in a session, like at the end of the day, you just want to be loved. You want a relationship to work out. And, it can be so hard to break these ties when we have history with someone, when we care about them, when we see the good in them and see the potential. And oftentimes it really is about like, yeah, coming into the acceptance of what is and the incapabilities that that person has to actually, be what we need. And I know that that was, a lot of what we focused on in our work together. So I do want to touch on like what you found supportive. In my program, of course, we're doing one-on-one coaching sessions via Zoom once a week. And then in between those sessions, we have Voxer support, which is a voice note and texting app, so that in between the sessions, you're able to still get support just, yeah, when life is happening in between our calls. So if you could just speak to, what you found supportive about the sessions, what worked well with the Voxer support as well, just to kind of give a little bit of insight into the actual support that you received.
Yeah, so I think that the Voxer definitely, I know um, I was able to come into Voxer whenever something was coming up for me in between our sessions. And that was huge just because everything was so random within the relationship and when the highs and lows were happening. So it was huge that I was able to, when that low happened,
Yeah.
I was able to reach out to somebody and hear back from you immediately. And you were very responsive and very, very detailed with your responses as well, whether it be voice notes or actually writing something out, which was huge for helping me through those really low moments in the moment that they were happening.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely and not holding on to it until the next time that I was going to see you and try to work through it by myself, especially the workshopping of what my responses were going to be. Though that was huge. And that helped me learn a lot about how to actually respond to people, was actually in the moment getting support on how am I going to respond to this person right now without it just sitting in my body and me just lashing out and saying something that I shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's why I love Voxer so much, is because it is like kind of troubleshooting the actual life that's happening in between the call. I think the sessions, you probably would agree, are more of like a deep dive, but then like as life happens, to be able to actually integrate these new concepts and ways of showing up more authentically and more from your heart and from more of an empowered place as well. So that, like, I think that's why the results can happen pretty quickly, is yeah, you're starting to make those shifts and show up in a way that's gonna, feel good for you, even if it feels out of your comfort zone. Nice to get that support, in the moment. And I think it's always helpful to troubleshoot and like talk through like, okay, this is what he said, like let's talk about how to break this down and like how do you want to respond to this. So I'm glad that that felt helpful for you. And then yeah, in terms of the sessions as well, just would love to hear how those were a little bit different than the, I guess, real-time support.
Yeah, so because we had the real-time support, I was able to get a lot of the things that were happening in the moment out of the way so that we could actually deep dive into bigger things during the actual sessions, which was huge. We weren't not that it would be a waste, but we were able to get through the day-to-day stuff and dive deeper for more of the session, and really focus on what was underlying these issues that I was going through and why I was allowing these things to happen. And I think we did a lot of our work about really getting into understanding that it has nothing to do with you and it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with the capability of being in a relationship and what your expectations versus their expectations of what a relationship looks like. And that released a lot of my control issues over relationships, to put it in one way.
Yeah, definitely. And, on the sessions, it's kind of diving deeper into like, why is this showing up? And like, let's look at the patterns. I know that this, relationship with your ex was a huge focus of our work together, but also I know we went back even further into prior relationships and looking at what themes are still following you. And like, let's get curious about those and figure out why they're showing up in your life, as opposed to more of that mindset of like, oh yeah, this is just what happens to me over and over. I have no control. Like I love holding the space for you to come into this empowered place. Like, what am I willing to allow to continue happening in my life? And let's actually figure out why I've been struggling so much with these relationship patterns. And like, then I think it's also fun to think about, what do I actually want? Like, let's imagine someone that is capable of, building the life with me that I want to have, and is capable of actually treating me how ultimately I deserve. And I think when we're stuck in those patterns, it can be hard to even picture that that exists.
Yeah. And I think your personality and your way of going through your coaching, I think was a good in opposition of my needing control of everything, and just really getting me to think about, like, things are going to happen when they're supposed to happen. The things that are meant to happen in your life are going to happen. And me allowing to actually feel into that, just releasing control,
Mm-hmm.
was huge, and ultimately I think was a lot of what changed things for my in my life.
Yeah, definitely. And it's no easy concept to like release that control and trust and believe that everything can work out and that everything will work out. And sometimes we have to release the timeline that we thought it would happen. And I know there's many women that can relate to, like, well, I'm this age and I want it to work out with this person. I don't want to start over. And I always love providing the perspective of like, right, but imagine taking forth this knowledge and growth and applying it to someone who can like really be on your level and meet you there. Like, you get to have what you want. And if it's a year or two or even 5 years later than you wanted, like, it still
Yeah.
gets to feel worth it, you know?
Yeah. And I can look back now. Um, there's still some staying there
Yes.
um, in the past, but I am able to look at it more in terms of, this is what I learned from you. This is what I
Mhm.
learned from you. And I'm able to kind of release that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And there's certainly no way to erase our past. And I think, like, why even do that when our past holds so much knowledge and opportunity and healing? And it's like, I think it's really about finding the tools that work when like aspects of our past come up in our current relationships. Like, how can we look at those and shift out of that? And like having the awareness alone of like, okay, this is a past pattern. You
Yeah.
know?
The awareness alone is huge
Yeah.
forward. And I already feel myself continuously using that now.
Mhm. Yeah, because that is half the battle, is at least knowing that this is my past showing up. So, how do I want to act from here? Or what tool do I want to, go into to work through these feelings that are coming up for me? So, while we can't, yeah, control what always pops up for us, if we can have the tools and the right support to move through it, that's going to support all of our relationships, from that point on. So, would love to kind of get into some of the just amazing shifts that you've had in your life. And I always love starting with relationship to self. And as you know, with working with me, that's the foundation of all of this. Regardless of who I'm working with and their relationship status, like building that strong relationship to self. So would just love to hear like how the relationship with yourself has shifted in a healthier way, how you view yourself, how you take care of yourself, and how that has positively impacted your life.
Yeah. One of the biggest things with self has definitely been that I have more confidence to go out and find my own habits,
Mhm.
or my own hobbies that I like. So with like the pottery class that I just finished, and potentially starting to enter into a book club,
Mhm.
and just doing all these different things, even doing starting jujitsu,
Yeah.
really knowing that I'm doing these things for me and it has absolutely nothing to do with anybody else. The reason why I'm doing it
Mhm.
has been really, really great for me. And we'd always talked about that. I really wanted to tap back into my artistic side, my
Yeah.
creative side, and I've been able to actually start embracing that again.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I remember, when you were first exploring that, and it felt like anxiety provoking for you to even think about, like, yeah, going and attending. I know you did like a paint night and you're like, well, I could go by myself. Like, do I want to do that? And it's not like the goal is, okay, like Casey, do every single thing by yourself. But I think you found and built a lot of confidence through putting yourself out there in new ways, going on hikes and bringing your camera and going on the photography trip. Like, you just like stepped out of your comfort zone and really cultivated a lot of self-trust, creativity, and just new experiences and new people through that as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, I think that that was like a huge part of your growth as well. And I think when we do cultivate and like show ourselves, like, oh, I get to create happiness for myself, I get to show myself fun experiences, like that fills our cup, that has us feel good because it kind of, I guess, releases that need for someone else to feel that happiness all the time. So yeah, I think that was a huge part of your growth for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, and it's nice to just look at it f- for yourself and be like, no, I do have my own stuff going on. I do a lot of stuff outside of my friends and my family and my relationship. I do things for me.
Yeah,
Whereas before, like I would kind of look at it as that I just had work
yeah,
and then I would come home and that I didn't have anything else going on in my life. And I'm able to actually look at my life and say, I have things that I'm doing for me.
yeah. Yeah, it's a really empowering feeling. And I think it attributes to a lot of confidence as well. So I love that you found that. And just, yeah, I think even we touched on this feeling that would come up in your relationships too, that you would sometimes want to adopt into like the hobbies and things that they did,
Yeah.
which is always fine if we can like experience like, the things that our partner really enjoys. But I think for you, it felt like you were lacking that, like, what is for me and how much do I really enjoy this? Am I just kind of like molding myself into what they want?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I can confidently say that a good amount of the things that I'm actually doing outside of work and my relationship is not because somebody liked it and I adopted it for myself. It's things that I'm actually interested in doing, and it's leapfrogging into other things that I also want to do and opening up other doors for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And anything else with your relationship to self, how you feel about yourself, take care of yourself, even like down to like self-talk, anything like that?
Yeah, self-talk's always I think going to be a struggle for me. It is a lot better now, and I do find myself, especially with the journaling,
Mhm.
when things are getting really low for me, and I do have a moment of really needing to express it. The has been helping at least just get it out of my body. Um,
Yeah, a lot of learning how to process challenging emotions and process like when our mind is spiraling, especially when, our mind doesn't just spiral for no reason. It's spiraling because you've had these real experiences with, relationships with people that were more avoidant or, emotionally immature or just lacked the capability to really be what you needed. So it like I think put you in an insecure space. So then like when they showed up differently, it was like, yeah, of course your mind is gonna spiral from there. So it's like how to navigate that in a way that can support you to be grounded again.
yeah.
So yeah, and I want to skip to like probably the the most exciting news. Obviously, like the relationship to self is huge and that will support you for the rest of your life regardless of where life takes you, but um seeing how obviously you're in this amazing relationship now, which is like unlike any of the relationships you've ever had. So, I would love to hear about like how you cultivated this healthy relationship, in your life. And just, yeah, how you were feeling internally when this relationship did come into your life.
So when the relationship came into my life, I was not looking. I had had a few people that were interested in, at certain points, I had looked, but I had made the decision for myself that unless somebody had really sparked something within me that I really wanted to get to know them, and that there seemed like there was something there that was compatible with me, that I was not going to pursue it. At the time, I had just started jujitsu, and I was doing a lot of other stuff for myself. I was in an adult kickball league at the time. I was going out with the people after the kickball games. So I really wasn't looking for that. And then he also does jujitsu with me. I hadn't talked to him, and then just one day it kind of came together, and he had reached out, and things fell into place, and I knew that that was the person that I needed to pursue things with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you were in a place where your cup was really full, like you were doing things that you enjoyed. And I remember that you got to this place of like not really wanting to entertain, like casual dynamics where it was like, oh, I could hang out with this person, like, and I think there was elements of like, yes, other people were interested in you, but you're like, you were just so ready for your person, like for the relationship, like after all of this that you've been through. And I think when we can commit to, it's like playing the long game, like, of course, sometimes it can feel nice to have people interested in us, but you were like, I really don't want to just fill my time with just anyone. Like, I want it to be, yeah, someone that I really see value and like they're adding value to my life and I really feel that type of, connection with. And I feel like as soon as you spoke that into existence, it was like, oh, and here he is, which was so
Yeah, it was crazy. I think that's exactly what I said to you. It was the weirdest thing that the second I just kind of like released that out into the universe and it was like, okay, you're ready now. Here you go.
yeah. Yeah. And I love the emphasis on like releasing and letting it go because I think that so much of what we worked through, especially when we were first working together, it's like there was this element of just like wanting to hold on, right? Hold on to people, like not let people go, like wanting it to work out. And I definitely can relate to that. And so can other women. And like, I think visually, I've even like shown this to clients on calls where it's like we have this like energy of like, needing it and gripping and holding on and just like being so attached to the outcomes. It's like this constricting energy. And if we can just like open up and let go, like now I can receive, right? Because I'm in this more of like a flow state. And I think like something that I come back to for myself personally, and I've probably said this to you more than once, is like you really can't go wrong when you're choosing yourself and like doing what's best for you. I
Yeah.
like I just believe that's a huge part in calling in the relationship as well as, the friendships too. It's like when we're in a good place with ourselves and just like filling our cup and taking care of ourselves and not abandoning ourselves in unhealthy relationships, that's a huge part in calling that person in.
Yeah. And I really didn't feel the need that I needed to be in that relationship. I didn't need to be in a relationship at all at that point. I was happy with where I was at, however long that was going to end up
Yep.
the way that it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another huge point as well, is like you really were in a good place where you're like, I'm happy right now. Like I've been through a lot, but I've created things for myself that are bringing me happiness. And even it's not like every component of your life had to be perfect and, like entirely fulfilled, but you were making the best of where you were at and you were always seeking new ways to find connection and just do things for yourself. So, what are some of the differences between, the ex that you were with when we were working together and this, your current partner now? Like, I mean, I feel like it's literally night and day, but would just love to kind of have you highlight the difference between someone who is more avoidant and like not capable of having a healthy relationship versus someone who can show up for you.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things was tying kind of everything together, honestly. Because I'm more aware and I know when my past is being triggered, um, I'm able to actually say something to him about it because we have talked about that. And I was very open and honest that I've had some difficult relationships in the past and that certain things will potentially pop up while we're together. And I want to know that somebody's going to work through them with me. And people can say that they will all day long. And that's something that I've dealt with in my past. And I've believed in that. But the very first time that popped up with us and I had expressed something to him and I had said, I do recognize that this is something from my past that's coming up, but it is, and I want to talk through it. He probably within like an hour, hour and a half was at my house
Mm.
and wanted to talk to me about it in person and did not shy away from it. And he's really maintained that going forward.
Yeah, that is just a massive green flag to emotional availability, right? So much of I know your past was emotional unavailability, like not able to have open conversations around feelings, or maybe would just give you just right a breadcrumb of that, but then walls back up, and so yeah, having a partner that's like, oh, something's coming up for you, like, and especially like, I will come to your house in person. I think you said he was like, let's make eye contact and talk about this, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that feels, yeah, brings a level of safety and comfort and like security for you, is like, wait, I actually get to be open and share how I'm feeling and have someone who wants to help me through this. I don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. And we've gotten to a place where we're able to workshop things together. If things are coming up for either of us, I feel very comfortable telling him when something's going on, and I know that he's not going to run away from talking about it.
Yeah. And it's so healing that you get to rewrite so much of the pain from your past through this relationship. That's why, like, I don't ever believe of, having to get to this, like, there is no perfectly 100% healed space. Like, our past is going to come up. I think that's one of the biggest things to gain awareness around, because we've been through things. So, sometimes it can be challenging when we then enter a healthy relationship, because it's like, oh, wait, can I really say this? Can I really be open? Like, if we haven't had those experiences, it's so new.
Yeah, I think that I had said that to you at one point, that I had seen a meme that had said, nobody speaks about how hard it is to be in a healthy relationship after so many unhealthy ones.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that the moments that I do feel down in our current relationship are things from my past that are rearing their head and that have nothing to do with how he's treating me.
Yep. Yeah. And the fact that you have, again, that awareness as to how your past will pop up is everything. Because if you didn't have that awareness, you're almost like have this false lens, and you'd be viewing your current healthy partner through the lens of your past, but you would have no idea. So you'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, wait, like you would just assume he won't hear me. He won't want to talk to me. And then you're going to shut down, and it's going to cause disconnection in the relationship, when in actuality, there's just this projection of your past onto something new, which, is a big reason why a lot of relationships won't work out. But it's like they almost didn't have a chance from the beginning if we can't actually give ourselves the opportunity to experience something new, because our nervous system, our mind, our body is still like, yeah, in the past with someone else. But here we are in this new experience.
Yeah. It's been really wonderful, but also it's scary. It's
Mhm.
definitely a scary feeling to let go of that kind of control and just trust somebody. But I feel like he's the person that I can
Yeah.
allow myself to trust like that.
Yeah, definitely. And it is such a healing experience, like, yeah, to be able to rewrite this and give yourself that evidence of like, oh wow, I actually get to be treated this way. I actually get to have the relationship that I've wanted all along, and that I was trying to make with people that just weren't capable. And I think it can help us, like, because I think in those dynamics, I know for me, I always felt like something's wrong with me. Like, if I could just be better, or if I could just love them enough, or like, why don't they see that I'm worth it? And I think like this type of scenario just shows that it never had anything to do with you. Like, you were never asking for too much. It was just someone who could not meet you there. So it's like you can love them until the end of the earth, but if they don't have the ability to communicate their feelings, or to sit with their feelings, or, to be what you need because of their own stuff, yeah, it's going to make you feel unworthy and just insecure and not good about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's like getting to experience this openness, like with someone who can meet you there. Any other like qualities that he has that are like maybe things you've never experienced before?
The way that he interacts with my family is probably one of the most attractive things about him. Um, my dad is obsessed with him. He absolutely loves him. I could see them hanging out together. It's actually really funny because I had seen something at one point that like people start date or end up with like their father, and I swear, like the other weekend we were all it was me, him, and my parents, and I was watching my dad and him together. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's happening. Like,
Seeing
I
those.
could like see that like merging, and I was like, oh wow, that's really happening, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that he's able to like connect with your family in that way because I know how important your family was to you. And I know that in your past relationship too, you were kind of like put down around some of the family trips that, you would take. And, like he didn't feel like he measured up. And just, yeah, then that makes you feel, yeah, just this imbalance, I feel like was there all along.
I couldn't introduce him to my family, or that there was a sense of anxiety around if they'd even get along, if their personalities just wouldn't match. And my current boyfriend is just, he fits right in, and
Yeah.
he doesn't even need me there to like help him have a conversation with my family.
Uh,
He reaches out to my family without me.
yeah.
He'll text my brother, he'll message my parents on Facebook or something like that. And that was something I've done in the past. And that was one of the really great things with him too, is I was the overgiver in a relationship. I would always give, 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 because I was trying to control and overlove to get them to stay. Um, but I feel that when I'm doing that in this relationship, it's purely just because I want to, and it's being reciprocated.
Huge difference, right?
Like
Yeah.
the little things that I used to do to try to just convince somebody to stay, he's doing because he just wants to do them and wants to reciprocate that
Oh, I love
of love.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
like my heart is like warm hearing that because yeah, how amazing that's how it gets to be. I know so many women and myself included can relate to that like overgiving, I'll just show them how amazing I can be. It's like we're trying to overcompensate and make up for what they can't do so then they don't need to do it. So let's just make it easier for them where it's like, yeah, now you just have someone who loves you back and like can show up and in ways where it's not like, oh, let me make sure, let me do this because I have like this hidden agenda because I want to keep this person around. It's like just feels so much more like relaxing. I feel like I can take a deep breath almost of like, oh, I can just be loved and I can love this person and they can love me back. And we can just have this openness with family, with our communication. And that's really like how it gets to be.
Yeah. And I don't feel this anxiety throughout the day, of like if we're not talking or
Mhm.
something throughout the day. I don't feel an anxiety, which I used to feel before. Like, what is he doing? Why isn't he answering me? I I'm able to go about my day and focus on other things and not be thinking about what does this silence mean, or why are you not responding to me? And that was one of the things that was actually very not shocking, but it worried me a little bit in the beginning because he has read receipts
Oh
on
yeah.
his texts. So I could see when he would read things and not necessarily respond right away. And in a past relationship, that would have freaked me out. I would have thought that I was being ignored, and it would have been chaos in another relationship. And in this relationship, I know, and we've talked about that he's just, the only reason why he's read it and has not gotten back to me is because he's busy right now. And he's very clear about what his schedule is on a day-to-day basis. So
Yeah.
we have a very clear expectation of why he may not be answering at a specific time, which is huge for me.
Yeah, and so much of what you're speaking about is really shifting out of like that anxious attachment style into a more secure attachment style. And it's not to say like we never have anxiety again, you know what I mean? But you're really able to come into like the facts of what's going on and you have a partner who gets to reassure you as well. Like, hey, this isn't personal at all. Actually, this is what my workday looks like and I'm going to be responding to you and you never have to worry about that. Whereas like in your last relationship, it was like okay, like for all I know, I won't hear from him for 3 days. And then I have to just sit here, right, with this anxiety. And then how hard is that on your body and your mind? And just to like function and try to get through the day, it's like one of the worst feelings,
Yeah.
you know? So, yeah, like having that moving into more of like a secure attachment where there is trust and comfort and safety and just all the things that, yeah, that you've deserved all along. So, how does it feel to, yeah, just be where you're at now? I mean, just like even picturing that version of you, like when we first started working together, like she may have not even believed that this is possible. Like, how does that, like, yeah, let's just take a moment to like
Yeah,
this like transformation in your life.
I definitely would not have ever thought that I would have gotten to this place
Yep.
in a relationship, and even to know that somebody could treat me this way.
Mhm. Yeah.
The shift is just night and day.
Yeah.
My confidence level, my just the relationship in itself,
Yeah.
having this and really knowing that this is what I deserve.
Mhm. Yeah, and you get to have that. And I love like, holding that belief and possibility even when I knew you didn't have it yet. That's why I just like love to be a stand for like, no, you, because I believe like we are all meant to be loved. We're all meant to be in a healthy relationship. It's just kind of peeling back those layers, seeing where we can improve the relationship with yourself, seeing where your past is in the way, seeing like, yeah, what do we need to let go of so that we can open up some new experiences, some new energy. And this so naturally came into your life. And I think that's why I love this type of work so much is that it gets to be like, it's not like, the work is necessarily easy, but in terms of like having the partner come into your life, I mean, it was pretty effortless. It's not like you were like, here's all my dating strategies. And you know what I mean? It just was very authentic.
Yeah, I loved that it happened that way. I I had gotten to a point I didn't even want to go back on a dating site ever again. It just wasn't,
Yeah.
it didn't feel like that was the place that I was going to find my person. And it wasn't the place that I found my person.
Yeah, and I think there's such an element where we do get to trust that because I think, and obviously dating apps are, a business and they want us to be on the app. And I think that's something that's important to remember. And I know plenty of people who have found great relationships on the apps, and that's awesome, right? Like we all, everything, whatever's meant to be will be. But I think sometimes with that, we can feel like, well, there's no way else I'll meet anyone. So I have to be on the app. And I think that's more like, a limiting belief, right? That's not necessarily true. And, actually, most of my clients, their relationships have not come from an app. So I think it's like just believing, like, I'll meet my person. I don't have to do anything that doesn't really feel true to myself, you know?
Yeah. And I loved that I met my person doing something that I enjoyed to do for me,
Mhm.
and that he was doing that same thing that he loved for him. So, like, right there, something was already built in that was a commonality between the two of us that we could connect on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, I think you even sharing, like, he had the same mindset about dating that you had at the time, too. Like, he was like doing his own thing, like almost exactly like verbatim what you had said earlier. Like, he said, oh, I'm just doing my own thing. And like, if I meet someone, I want it to be someone that I really feel a connection with. Otherwise, I'm not going to pursue it.
Yeah, he had the exact same mindset. I'm
Yeah.
not going to pursue something if I don't see the rest of my life with this person.
Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, talking about how relationships, can really mirror each other. Like you guys were both putting yourself first, doing things that you love, not entertaining, just random connections if it didn't feel like it had this, potential for the future. You had all of these commonalities. And so it just makes sense like how you were guided together in this way. And yeah, I love the ease of it and the flow of it and just the authenticity. Like you were being yourself. And now that's why you're being loved for who you are, which is always like what I desire for every client, both from themselves and from, the person that they're meant to be with. So yeah, feels good. Very fulfilling for me to just see all of this unfold as well. And just the last question I want to touch on, or actually a couple others. The first thing before we move into the last one, is there any other like wins in your life, like even just like aside from the relationship, anything around like friendships or just, yeah, anything else that you feel like was a shift for you after getting this type of support?
I mean, definitely the personal,
Yeah.
getting back into my creative side and really feeling like I can do things on my own and have my own hobbies again.
Yeah.
Um, that's probably equally as important to me as the fact that I have the relationship that I've always wanted, is the fact that I can go out and not be so focused on the relationship as well, and I choose to have my hobby instead of seeing my boyfriend that one night or something like that.
Yeah, it's like not having the anxiety of like, oh, let me make sure I'm tailoring my every move to like keep this relationship going, right? That's just like a lot of pressure. So it sounds like you have more space to actually enjoy your life and do things that you love and feel secure in that, even if they don't involve your partner. So
Yeah,
awesome.
that's, yeah, probably as important to me as a
Yeah.
huge win for the work that we did.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. And I think that's why it goes hand in hand. Like relationship to self will set the tone for all of our relationships. So last question, would just love to know from you, why you would recommend that someone invest in coaching. Like for some people, coaching is like, I don't even know what that is. Like, why would I want to invest in that? Just what would you say to someone that was thinking about, signing on to get this type of support?
So I had really kind of touched on my biggest thing earlier, but it's the fact that it's action steps,
Mhm.
that there's specific things, and you really don't hold back. You're going to give your opinions, you're going to help me through things. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the honesty, and I appreciate the candidness of the work that you do. I think it really helped me reach that space quicker.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just that I would, and having Voxer, it gave me the opportunity to not just be emotionally dumping on somebody and going through everything that was making me upset and having this like purge of emotions, that then, okay, now I'm back on a high again until the next time that we meet. It was a completely different experience from any other type of therapy that I've had before. In actually helping me through things and getting me to a better place.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I love like I love how coaching is really like a co-creative process. Like we're doing this together. It's not like you're left to figure things out on your own, but you are the one, of course, taking the action steps, but I'm kind of guiding you through that process. But I think, the reasons why these, I guess, like big wins happen so quickly is because we're diving deep, but then you're also, yeah, it's all about like, okay, and what are we doing with that? And what's the goal that you want to set? And like, how can you have a conversation around this? Like, it's all about moving you closer and closer to those desires that you had from the beginning, which was to have this, healthy relationship and also improve the relationship that you have with yourself as well. Um, and then in terms of just like, yeah, for some people that aren't used to making an investment in like their personal growth, how do you feel like you view that at this point? Because I know like you've invested in coaching for the last year. Like, how do you view spending that type of money on yourself?
It was the best investment I've ever made.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
changed my life in so many different ways, and you've provided me with things that I'll be able to use past this point.
Yeah. And I think like that's something, and I know, of course, I've done many, many different coaching programs and hired so many different coaches and mentors myself as well. And I think that's like the thing as well as these tools will serve you for the rest of your life and the awareness that you have will, right, as you said, obviously it's been a bit since we've actually even like had a session we wrapped up months ago. And you're still even sharing different ways like, oh yeah, this pops up for me and this is how we handle it. So yeah, the benefits are honestly ones that will serve you the rest of your life. So I appreciate you highlighting that. So anything else you want to share before
Well,
we?
I mean, even just the tools that
Mhm.
we've gone through too, even just the stuff that we set up in the beginning, that stuff I can continue to use moving forward, and I can expand on it on my own.
Yes. Yeah, and actually I'm glad that you brought that up. Something that I do with each client is we work together out of a Google Drive. So there's like different resources in there, worksheets, things that I personalize to each client so that and you have lifetime access to that. So like you can go in there and read your vision statement and update it and create the next thing that you want to create or like yeah, just have references for everything that we move through so that you're not yeah, it's not like it's just oh, did that and now I'm moving on. It's like these tools are meant to serve you for the rest of your life. So awesome. Well, Casey, thanks so much for sharing, about your experiences and just being so open because I know that so many women can relate to where you were. And so I just appreciate you sharing where you are now because it gets to be another example of what's possible. So thanks so much for being here and being so open.
Of course, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let me